And thank you very much for joining us for this evening's speakers panel. This is an opportunity for you to address your questions to all of the speakers at this conference, including several who have not yet actually made presentations. So this will be an opportunity for you to get a little preview of what some of these speakers will be saying tomorrow, including David Adair and Deborah Lindemann, but it's also an opportunity for you to address questions to any of the speakers, and in some cases these questions may appropriately be addressed to more than one of the speakers. So we'll give you as much time as we can for that, in order that you have an opportunity to hear a little bit of what each of these people represents in their own work and thinking. I'm going to ask each of these speakers to make a 3-minute opening statement, which will obviously go by quickly and not amount to a whole lot of information, but perhaps give you something to start with. First, I would like to quickly introduce each of the speakers in order, starting at the far end with Melinda Leslie. Melinda hails from Southern California. She is an abductee and founding director of the UFO Lectures of Orange County. She is a very active abduction researcher and a well-known lecturer all over the United States. Next to her is Dolores Cannon. Dolores is a prolific researcher, writer of many books, and an expert in hypnotic regression, which she has used to research a wide variety of paranormal subjects. Her UFO books include Keepers of the Garden and her latest book, Legacy from the Stars. Next to Dolores is Ann Strieber. Ann is part of the dynamic duo of Ann and Whitley. Ann has edited all of Whitley's books, so she has a greater hand in Whitley's work than you might think. Ann has also read more than 200,000 letters which have been received by Ann and Whitley since Whitley began revealing some of his unusual experiences back in 1987. And Ann is the principal compiler and editor of a new book due out at the end of November called The Communion Letters. I personally think it's going to be a sensational book. I really recommend that you get it as soon as possible. Next to her, a man that really hardly needs an introduction, Whitley Strieber, who spoke this afternoon, Ann and Whitley together. Whitley is, he may not like me to say this, but probably the world's most famous abductee, and certainly the best-selling, and certainly the one of the world's best-selling and most influential authors in this very, very difficult, important field of contact experience. His many books include the sensational international bestseller Communion, a sequel to Communion called Communion 2 will be out early next year. Of course, he's also written Transformation, Breakthrough, and his most recent book, The Secret School. Next to him, Dia Martin. Dia is a gifted intuitive and reader of auras whose special gifts have been employed by several government agencies over the years, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Office of Special Investigations and the Department of Defense. Much of her professional work can be called profiling, and if you've ever seen the television program Profiler, she's a real profiler, professional profiler. Also, a very active UFO researcher. Next to her, David Adair. David is the real live space scientist, the real rocket scientist on our panel tonight. Internationally recognized expert in space technology spin-offs for industry and commercial use. David built advanced rockets as a teenager and attracted attention from the military, who asked him to test a rocket under their auspices. And in the process of doing that, he says, he was shown a very unusual propulsion system that he believes was of alien manufacture. That story is at the heart of what David will tell you in his lecture tomorrow at 9 a.m. Robert Ghostwolf is a holistic healer, a teacher, a ceremonial leader, and a shaman. Robert Ghostwolf has trained for more than 30 years with Native American tribal elders all over the country, as well as Aboriginal elders and leaders around the world. Robert, among other things, led the first ghost dance that was ever done in this country for the last 108 years. That was last year, one of his many recent accomplishments. He also has a book for sale. I believe it's called Last Cry. Is that correct? Last Cry is available out in the book area. Deborah Lindemann is a certified registered hypnotherapist and abduction researcher. She has worked professionally with many abductees. She is working on her first book, and I'm happy to say she is my wife. I am Michael Lindemann, futurist, UFO researcher, and editor of CNI News, and I'll be the moderator this evening. So, with our introductions out of the way, I'd like to start again at the other end of the table and invite Melinda Leslie to give us a very, very brief opening statement.
Okay, am I on? All right. The byproduct of sitting at the end is you get to go first. First of all, though, I want to say something just because it tickles me, and so my hat's off to Vicki, not only for a wonderful conference that she's put on, but also for the fact that we ended up with a panel that the women outnumber the men on it, and on a UFO panel, this is a rarity, and so I think I'm really tickled to see that happen. As you said, my name is Melinda Leslie. I run a lecture series in Orange County. I've been speaking about my abduction experiences. After a personal experience I had that also involved military involvement, I started to research that aspect, and now I've been researching and lecturing on that particular aspect. And compiling information and talking to many, many people with stories. And I've met a number here yesterday and today as well. And it's just becoming very, very prevalent, abduction research, this military involvement. As I said, I'm meeting more and more people all the time. And to me, it's some of the greatest evidence for the reality of UFO abductions, the fact that they're interested at all. In fact, I now title my lecture, If Not, meaning if not abductions, then why is any of this happening? Again, as I said, because the fact that there's a military involvement, the fact that there is harassment of the abductees, and extensive evidence for this, real hard evidence too, black helicopter harassment, photos of that, video footage of that, the mail tampering, doctors' offices being broken into and records taken, therapists' offices being broken into, the same thing, homes being broken into, mail tampering, people being watched, people being followed, all different various forms of harassment like that, and surveillance, it seems, but also people actually seeing military personnel with the aliens in their experience, or flat out being re-abducted by the military because they've had an alien experience and asked, what have you seen, what have you been told, what have you been shown? And specifically, they seem to have an interest, and this is where my research really is going, is in the technology aspect, that the military and government seems to want to know what abductees know about the technology. And so that's where my research is at now. And I hope some of you got to hear me lecture. If you didn't, I do have a video that's my complete lecture, actually a 4-hour presentation I once did for a MUFON group that's a 3.5-hour video edited down. And I hope to answer any questions anyone might have about that. But anyway, so that's my research, and that's my aspect of involvement in this.
Thank you, Melinda. Dolores?
Okay, well, that's one thing I think is good. We're all coming from different directions. We've all got different backgrounds, and we're all looking at the little pieces of the puzzle. So we all have different pieces, and we're trying to get the answer by putting it all together. So that way, I think everybody's research is valid, because we all have different parts of it. Nobody has the complete answer. It's much too complicated for that. So we all should honor each other's research and information as we do compile the entire picture. Maybe one of these days we'll find out what's going on, maybe in our lifetime. Okay. But I'm a hypnotherapist, and my roots in hypnosis actually go go back 30 years, back into the 1960s. But I was not able to start practicing full-time until my children were grown and they were all married and to college. And I started doing past life research 18 years ago. And I do past life regression, past life therapy, mostly with my hypnosis, taking people into other lifetimes to find the answers to problems in this lifetime. So that was for that reason that 10 years ago in Arkansas, they asked me if I would help them with the UFO research. They had many cases of abduction, but nobody could handle the cases. And I just had a lecture. Some of these people have probably already heard me tell this. But a lot of the people, especially in Arkansas, the psychologists have no background with this type of a thing. They don't know how to handle it. If it's not in the book, they don't even know what questions to ask. So they asked me if I would come in because they said, you've been working in the bazaar for so long. They didn't think this would bother me. So I began doing the abduction reports, and I was doing the in-field investigations. I've been in the crop circles 3 years in a row in England. My publisher over there is on the Board of Investigations, so I've been a lot with that. So when I have a more lengthy lecture, I do go into the crop circles also. So I've covered all the different facets of it, but mostly I've been involved in the abduction scenario for 10 years. And now I'm doing this all over the world. We're working on TV series in England where they've been bringing me cases that have been screened over there. And it's remarkable that there is a repeatable pattern. No matter where I go in the world, the same scenario keeps coming up again and again and again. I think if there was something that was not real about this, we would have contradictory stories. There would be something in it that didn't quite fit together. But why do people all over the world who have no knowledge of what the other people have said, many of these people do not have access to the books that we have, but yet they're all producing the same information. To me, this gives it validity. Case after case, that keeps coming up with the same information. So I've written 10 books, and most of them deal with my cases in regression therapy, but 3 of them deal with my work with UFO abductions and research. I consider myself the reporter. I get the information, put it together, do the research, and then write the books about it. I'm working on 3 more books right now. There's so much information. I said I could write 10 more before even looking for information. It's dealing right now with some more very complicated ideas with UFOs and aliens.
Thank you very much, Dolores. Ann, would you like to?
Well, I'm here really for one reason, and that is that if anybody's had experiences or knows someone who's had experiences and you're wondering if these experiences are unique or if they have been had by many other people, I can tell you that. So that's why I'm here.
I've been having, for 10 years, I've been writing about close encounters that I've had, or that I think I've had. I changed recently, and my own experience is now taking us, is in the background. It still happens, but my new book, Communion 2, which I think it's called, we're not sure about that yet, which will be out in May, is about our experience from a research standpoint. And I'm very interested in physical evidence, how to get it, how to analyze it properly, determine what it means, and to take this whole field from where it is now to a point where it is a concrete enough mystery to be accepted as one by the general public and to be considered a valid direction for scientific research.
Thank you, Whitley. Gia?
Hello again. I feel like we know each other on a one-to-one basis now. I was trained as a profiler 25 years ago, and because of a special ability to see colors, which initially I thought was not a blessing, not even a blessing in disguise, but each day I learn that it seems to have a divine potential. And in just a few words, I would like to say that instead of focusing on what is called the New Age, I believe we should focus on what is called the now moment. That we need to look at the new energies and the new evidence that's being presented to us from facets that are phenomenal, whether it's about the UFOs, ETs, contactees, or our own spiritual gifts and abilities and development. There is something phenomenal happening in the world and possibly in the universe. And I believe that's why each and every one of us are here, is to experience this not only as individuals, but in harmony with each other. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Dia. David?
David Adair, and I work in the aerospace community. I have worked professionally there for the last 25 years. I own my own aerospace consulting firm in Atlanta, Georgia. And what I do is I do aerospace technology transfer. That is where we take technology that's designed for the use in space, we redesign it and apply it into commercial applications. Probably an example would be the best was like when astronauts went to the moon, took 3 days out, 3 days back, 2 days on the surface, that's about 8 days. And they're eating solid food, so after a couple of days, something's got to give, y'all. You know, and there's no bathrooms on board Apollo capsule. You got 3 guys shoved in something outside the walk-in closet. So they had to develop a really neat diaper. And we had to figure out a way of getting the material to get off the skin, so keep them dry. Everything floats up there, you know. So you can get it, you can get in trouble, seriously. So we built a really neat material that could do that. We transferred it to Johnson & Johnson. You got the disposable diaper. That's where it came from. Oh. So that's technology transfer. And I can get this, ooh, wow, gee. I can go for 8 hours telling you the stuff we've created you just don't know about. But the bigger picture of what we do today, there is a tremendous upheaval in the space program. It's very difficult for a lot of people. There's a lot of disconcernment about where we're going, what kind of goals. Our leadership is constantly in question. I'm in the private sector side of the space program. I never worked with NASA. We get along about as well as the Arabs and Israelis do. And so I'm constantly at war on one side and trying to get the other program up and running on the other side. So it's a difficult concepts that we're dealing with. But there's enough space-based manufacturing out there that warrants for all of us to be involved in this. What I do primarily is I create systems where I create machines that make the products that you're going to be using very soon. In the pharmaceutical arena, we make drugs out there. And the drugs we can make out in that arena are impossible to achieve here on this planet. There's an enzyme hormone right now working with a major pharmaceutical company right now, and I was able to build a machine that's called an electrophoretic processor. And what we can do in a weightless environment is to take an enzyme and separate it from the other elements that you can't do here on Earth called the gravity field. This enzyme, or actually it's a hormone compound, we've gave it to class 2 diabetics, which they take insulin shots every day. This hormone has now set off in the pancreas a catalytic conversion. We did this 6 years ago in Emory University with 4 different people. They laid their needles down. They haven't had a shot in 6 years. Welcome to the cure for diabetes. Can only be manufactured in space, cannot be manufactured here. And that is some of the stuff we'll be talking about tomorrow, but that's what I do for a living the last 2.5 decades.
Thanks very much, David. Robert Goswell.
I'm the lucky guy who gets to sit up here with all these people. I sort of stumbled into what I do. I started out as an artist, a very serious artist, and I met a lot of people because of that, and possibly because I was an artist and I didn't present a threat to a lot of people. They started sharing stories with me. Stories became knowledge. And at a very early age, I was more or less adopted by many elders and taught things all over this turtle and the turtle to the south. What I do is I am basically a ceremonial leader who works with people all over the world. And I'm a bridge messenger, because where I come from is experience, maybe not necessarily at times technical knowledge, yet at other times perhaps technical knowledge expressed from another side of our brain that we haven't learned to access yet. And this is essentially what I do, and what I will be doing later on tonight is, last night they had me tell you scary Halloween stories. Because it was Halloween, give me a break. And tonight I'll be working with some of the actual things that you can do to meet tomorrow, actual things you can apply in your life, things you can do to work with the coming of the shift, changing of consciousness, things that are happening with disease, and a little bit about what the crop circles are telling you. And that's essentially it. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a very interesting field. I'm sure a lot of you realize that once it grabs hold of you, it like really grabs hold of you. There's no such thing as just going halfway with the subject. Back in 1989, when I first started working with people hypnotically, I was not at that time specializing in dealing with people who'd had unusual experiences, but I was specifically more interested in past life regression and just helping people to be more of who they really are. But as people came in with different issues like phobias and fears and things, gradually the onion skin began to be unpeeled. And while I've always been very open to this subject, when I began to see more and more of this, it really did grab hold of me. And I realized that we were looking at something incredibly important that was not only happening to each individual who was going through the experience, but there was this ripple effect that was going to touch every human being on Earth. And I knew then that once it got a hold of me, that this was going to be a lifetime focus that I was going to have. And I knew my role somehow was to help people in making this leap, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more tomorrow, of how we could hold on to the things that we cherished most in our life that's most familiar, and how we could bridge that gap and move forward into a very bold new world that none of us are familiar with. And I know that that's my role, is to help in that process. And in that, it's taken me into a lot of different interesting areas that I've investigated to find answers to this phenomena, including looking at altered states of consciousness, how perhaps some of those areas, including quantum physics, might explain the things that we can't explain with our five senses. I've looked at memories, which I'll be talking about tomorrow. How in the world do we know that our memories are genuine? How do you know that you can believe them? And it really brings us right down to the very basis almost of what is real and what isn't real. And sometimes that gets to be a real fuzzy border, and it's a very difficult one. And I know very much that this is something that I'm going to be doing for a long time. And if ever our paths cross where I'm able to help and assist you in that, I know I'll grow as much as you will. And I hope you'll all come out and hear me to speak tomorrow. Thank you.
I would like to remind everyone that Robert Ghostwolf has a special presentation later on this evening, starting at 8:30. Is that correct? David Adair has his lecture tomorrow. I believe it's 9:30. Is that correct, David? And Deborah has hers at 9 o'clock. David is at 9 o'clock tomorrow from 9 to 10:30, and Deborah Lindemann's lecture starts at 1:30. Anyone else presenting tomorrow? Dolores?
Yeah, I'm doing the Nostradamus material.
Right, and Dolores, and you're first thing in the morning, aren't you, Dolores?
No, I'm about noon, I think.
Oh, okay, 10:45. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
what it is. I finished at noon, okay.
Okay, great. Now that we're all confused.
Okay.
Very briefly, I began researching the UFO controversy, I would like to call it, in 1989. I came to it unexpectedly for myself. I was not an experiencer. To this day, I don't think I am a UFO experiencer or a contactee or abductee. I came at it basically from the question, is there a cover-up? Are there official secrets? This arose out of work I had been doing during the decade of the 80s, basically as a political analyst and a Cold War weapons analyst, looking at how it was that the pattern of secrecy rippled through the government and what that secrecy looked like as a kind of signature of behavior. It became clear to me when someone asked me to look at UFOs, and I did it grudgingly at first, it became clear to me that the pattern of secrecy, that particular signature or stamp, is literally all over the UFO subject, and that intrigued me a great deal. From that point forward, it seemed to me that there was very little else in the world more important than what might be behind that facade of secrecy. And today, of course, many, many things have changed. In just the last 8 or 9 years since I personally began dealing with this on a full-time basis, I don't take any personal credit for that. I have watched it open-mouthed, as many of you have perhaps as well. The progress of our knowledge is astonishing, and yet the complexity and strangeness of what we're dealing with manages to stay ahead of our learning curve, which is fascinating as well as frustrating, and I'm sure many of you know exactly what I mean. In the last couple of years, I have gravitated to the role of reporter, and I consider that I have a useful role to play in trying as best I can to to discern legitimate information from a great deal of information out there which is either ill-conceived or downright purposely wrong, which we term disinformation. There's a great deal of that going around. To make that discernment as much as possible and to report the best of the best as well as I can, many people seem to think that that is a useful thing to do at this juncture. So any of you who are familiar with CNI News will have some sense of what that's about. So anyway, not being an experiencer, work really from the evidence presented by others, including a number of the people on this panel. Now you have, I think, at least a quick bird's eye view of where each of the speakers is coming from, and I would like to now invite your questions. Let's do it this way. The microphone is here. Please line up with your question clearly in mind. We'll call you in order. You may address your question to any individual on the panel, or you may address it to the panel, and we'll see if more than one wishes to answer. I would like to ask that you have your question firmly in mind when you come to the microphone, and that you don't come to the microphone with a lecture. Okay? Please come with a question or a brief comment to which the panel can respond. If everyone will honor that rule, everyone will get a chance to say what they have to say. Would anyone like to start? Please come to the microphone. Don't wait on ceremony. Just come to the mic right here. Line up and please just bring your questions to the mic and get ready to go. And I will, as gently and politically and diplomatically as I can, cut you off if you're going on and on. Sir, go ahead.
So we each get one question, then we can start over.
That's right.
I guess this will be to the two hypnotists. I think there's two of you guys up there, women up there. How do you get if you feel like you've had an experience and you go to not one but two different hypnotists and they hypnotize you and you get the same thing, which is just this absolutely bizarre reaction, okay, that more bizarre than what you're going there to find out what it's about, then I don't know what, do you keep going to other hypnotists till you get an answer, or do you figure I'm never going to get an answer to this? Or what? I'm sure I'm not the only person who's encountered this, of just getting this massive noise when you try to regress one of these episode things. So,
Can I ask you, what is the...
Are you a hypnotherapist yourself?
No, I've been hypnotized by two different hypnotists trying to get to the bottom of an episode that I had, which I have no very limited conscious memory of, but I'm trying to get some help. And it's just, as I say, what I got in hypnosis made it even worse on some levels.
All right.
That's what I want to ask you. What do you mean by a bizarre reaction? Was something you didn't remember, or what?
Yeah, I mean, like throwing stuff across the room, screaming, crawling across the floor, and literally getting carpet burns on my face, and not being able to face whatever it was that happened to me.
You were doing this while you were in trance?
Yeah, and it's happened with two different hypnotists. I even have it on videotape.
Oh, I've never had anything like that occur.
You've never.
Have you?
It sounds to me like you're definitely covering something up, something that's extremely frightening to you that you don't want to look at. And it's very easy, to come up with all kinds of reactions to keep from bringing that truth up. Maybe that's one of your ways of coping. One of the misnomers in hypnosis is that a lot of people think that as soon as you're put into trance, that all this stuff is going to come flooding up. But the fact is, when you're in hypnosis, you're the one who's in control. The hypnotherapist is only a guide, and it's you that allows and gives yourself permission to bring that stuff up. So if you're going through all of this stuff, it's one of your ways of keeping yourself from knowing the ultimate truth.
And I always trust the subconscious. If it doesn't want to release it, it's not time. It's not ready.
So try again in a year is what you're saying? Or?
Well, why do you want to know it if it's...
I'm just curious. I'm just curious if I've ever seen a space alien. I've never seen one consciously. I have no idea what
I always say, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
So you just let it lie.
Yeah.
And do you agree with that?
I completely agree. I say if your life is working in every way, why bring up stuff that you don't need to know about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, once you open that can of worms, it's pretty hard to close it up again. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I had read in the paper that Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, is requesting a congressional investigation into the UFO matter. I asked the panel, does anyone know about this? Why he's coming forth now? How many other astronauts know about it? Have the same feelings?
I can address that question. Maybe someone else would like to as well. But Edgar Mitchell has been vocal on this several times in the last approximately year and a half. Most recently at the Prophets Conference in Phoenix, Arizona 2 weeks ago, which may well be what your article was referring to. He made some very public statements which found their way onto the Associated Press wire. Edgar Mitchell has gone from being extremely reticent about discussing UFOs to being extremely vocal and forceful in demanding government action. He now believes, and has said publicly, that he does believe that the UFO phenomenon represents something very real and very mysterious and very important. He says there are government secrets. He expects there are aliens on this planet. He has said that publicly, and he is calling for release of government information and open hearings. He is not the only astronaut who has done this. The other one who has been most forceful in asking for that is Gordon Cooper. Cooper's health, however, is very, very frail now, and it's not clear how much Cooper will be able to be involved in that. On the other hand, Edgar Mitchell is in good health and very robust and energetic, and he seems to essentially be on the warpath. And I say, go get him.
But he must have some contacts. He must have connections to stick his reputation, because he is in charge of noetic sciences, a very prestigious paper. So he's got a little bit at stake here.
Well, Edgar Mitchell, first of all, is no longer associated with the Institute for Noetic Sciences, although he did found it. He's pretty much on his own. He just published a book which was well received called The Way of the Explorer. He has become associated with Dr. Stephen Greer, among other things, and endorses Greer's program to bring open hearings. David Adair was also involved in that. Maybe David has something to say about this. But anyway, that in a nutshell, that's the situation. Did you want to say anything about that, David?
Yeah, at the hearings on April 9th this year, Ed Mitchell was there, and he was addressing an issue on camera about how he was very careful to distance himself from ever seeing an alien or a spacecraft, but and he's been careful about that. But he's also always been more of a renegade in the aerospace community. He was the astronaut, if you remember, that conducted ESP experiments. And let me tell you, when he did that, that he had to have tremendous nerve to do that, because he really went against NASA's mainstream. But he's always going against mainstream. And what's happening is there's a momentum effect with so many people coming out of the woodwork. And I guess I'm one of the insects coming out of the woodwork. But we finally met. I knew him when I was a child. So we met again not too long ago before the hearings in Atlanta. And he said, there's more of you guys out there. I said, I know, Ed. I saw a bunch of them there that day. And we're starting to come out. And it's really the public attitude is why we've been quiet all these years. Because, see, I happen to like my 3D physical science career. I really like that. Makes good money. Sure, I'm going to walk up and go, yeah, I'll stand on top of an alien spacecraft engine, in a secret Air Force base called Area 51. So much for a career, right? Yeah. More than that, the public would eat you alive like piranha. This was 1971. However, your attitudes have changed, and it's changed to what's tolerable, where we're willing to take the heat of the officials, but we couldn't take the heat of the officials and the general public. We just can't handle that. We're trying to live a life. And it's like all these expos you go to, New Life Expo, Whole Life Expo, Get a Life Expo. So anyhow, it's your tolerance that general public, and even in corporate America where I work, that's where I spend 98% of my time in corporate arena, they're willing to talk about this. So we decided to say something. So Ed's just jumping. He's always been a leader, but he's got momentum now, and he's really kicking up a lot of dust about it, and he's getting more angry is what it is as he gets older, because like case with Corso, a lot of them, when you get old and mortality is knocking on your door, you want to kind of finish a few things before you leave here, and he knows. He knows.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Dia.
I would like to acknowledge that Gordon Cooper, and many of you know this, that Gordon Cooper long ago was willing to go out on that proverbial limb. He even addressed the United Nations via a letter asking them to address these issues. At that time, many of us were not as knowledgeable or at least as committed to these issues then as we are now. And as it's been brought up, as Michael said, Gordon Cooper is now suffering from Parkinson's disease. His spirit, however, is strong and willing. My point is this: Gordon Cooper had limited power behind him because we, the people, did not stand behind him. If any of our astronauts or anyone comes forward and they're willing to tiptoe out on that proverbial limb or even stump, I hope that we're all with them because they need our support.
Thanks, Dia.
If I can make a very quick comment on that too.
Okay.
Some other astronauts I know have also come forward. In fact, maybe you guys can help me remember the name. I'm just pulling a blank here, but one was just quoted after a talk he gave to some business group in Hawaii at the very end, where he showed a picture of an alien. This is a recent shuttle astronaut. You guys can probably tell me who this is. Where he showed a picture of an alien, a gray, at the end of his talk, and said, "Oh, by the way, I can tell you these guys are real."
Story Musgrave.
Story Musgrave. Thank you. Yeah, Story Musgrave said that. And
I would like to jump in on that and say that I think that unless you were in the room and saw Story do that, I would like to say that that's apocryphal, and that a person very, very close to Story Musgrave, who I happen to know well and trust, said Story would never in a million years say, this is real. So I'd like to scotch that right here.
Okay,
Story
well,
actually,
I heard this story.
No, I realize this story is circulating, but let's be careful.
Okay.
This is me, the news reporter, doing this.
And that's fair. I also did see him though on a recent UFOs the Best Evidence videos program that was on TV, where he was interviewed on that, and he seemed rather supportive of the subject too.
Story Musgrave is definitely of the opinion that there is other intelligent life in the universe. He has made that absolutely abundantly clear.
Okay.
But he has not said, as far as we know, he has never said, I've seen an alien, or I believe this particular kind of alien is real. I don't believe he's gone.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just throwing that out as I was aware of another astronaut there, as well as I believe that Neil Armstrong in the past has made some brief comments. So I think with encouragement, we'll get more from them. I hope that everyone else here is in agreement with me on that.
Yes, sir.
Hi. This is directed to you, Michael, and possibly you, David. Anyone else can comment on it. But I was reading a book recently, and they mentioned a man by the name of Bill Cooper. I think his full name is Milton William Cooper. You know him? Okay.
Yes.
He said in this particular article, it was reported secondhand, that in 1954 that President Eisenhower had met with the Greys out at Edwards Air Force Base and had signed a a sort of a pseudo treaty with them, allowing them to build bases, allowing them to share their technology with us at 2 bases, allowing them to abduct people in a very minimal quantity, providing that they reported back to us and that those people had no memory of that. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Well, I can, and perhaps some others
I'll
can
let you,
too.
Michael, because I was born in 1954, so
No,
go right
that's
ahead.
I can say a few things about that, and perhaps a few others can too. Let me say to start with that despite many misgivings, I have a place in my heart for Bill Cooper because a very, very persuasive audio tape of Bill Cooper was one of the first things I ever heard on the subject of UFOs. And I have Bill Cooper to thank in part for getting my attention. In the summer of 1989, Bill Cooper gave a couple of very, very passionate and highly articulate talks about UFOs. They included the very claims you've said, exactly as you said them. At the time, I had no idea whether any of it was true. But Bill Cooper did sound like he knew what he was talking about and had done his homework. He certainly did. It's interesting to see, however, that in the years since then, Bill Cooper has disavowed almost everything he said in those audio tapes. And today, we'll go so far as to say that anyone who is even thinking about UFOs is a damn idiot. He says the real problem is that the American government is pulling the wool over all your eyes over all these other issues, and he's gotten very into the patriot movement and kind of the militant end of the patriot movement. I don't know if that means that he actually doesn't believe anything he used to say. I don't know. I can't speak for him on that. What I can say is this. There has been a legend about Eisenhower's contact with aliens around for a long time. That legend actually began when a man who was associated with a group called Borderland Sciences Association, I believe it's called, published a letter purporting to be from someone who attended the meeting and saw it occur. The apocrypha around this began with a demonstrably real event when Eisenhower went on a Gulf vacation in the summer of 1954 to Palm Springs, California. And for a period of approximately 1 day, he disappeared from the area. Now, this is a known fact. It did occur, and in fact, it caused such a ruckus that one of the news wires, I'm not sure if it was UPI or AP, announced that Eisenhower had died of a heart attack. They didn't know that to be true. They jumped the gun because the president never just disappears. And he did. And it became a sort of scuttlebutt kind of assumption that what had happened was that he had been surreptitiously taken up to Edwards Air Force Base, which is a hop, skip, and a jump in an airplane from Palm Springs, and that there he met aliens, saw spacecraft, blah, blah, blah. But the content of that rumor came from a guy whose letter was published in Borderland Sciences newsletter sometime later. It was assumed in the content of the letter that the man was an eyewitness, but later it was learned that he had seen this telepathically. And that in fact, neither he nor any other person ever attested to being a physical eyewitness to this event. It is unclear, therefore, whether anything happened. It is true that Eisenhower's disappearance was never explained to the satisfaction of the press. In fact, when he did turn up a day later, they said he had a toothache and went to the dentist, which was a story that nobody believed. Okay. However, as far as I know, there is no more actual content to the rumor than that. Can anyone add? Anyone on the panel? No? Okay. Next question.
Well, I had one thing to say about William Cooper.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
And that is that he's put it about that I am a CIA agent. And since I know personally that I'm not.
But that's what you'd say.
Well, exactly. I don't have too much respect for his research methodologies.
Yes, sir.
Michael, this isn't to refute what you said about the story, Musgrave's story. Just to back Melinda's story, the man who said that story said that is a well-respected Hawaiian news anchorman who I've had correspondence with. He said he was there that day, and he said Musgrave said it. He goes, I couldn't believe that he said it. So he's well respected. I don't know if he said it, but that's where it came from. So I guess we'll find out.
If you can give me a name, I'd like to check it out.
Okay, I have his address too. This is for the whole panel. The one most controversial topic I've come up with when I talk to any of the UFO researchers is Earth changes. Robert Goldswolf talks a lot about it, and whenever you bring it up to the researchers, everybody has open minds about a lot of stuff, but if you bring up Earth changes, it seems like it strikes a nerve. And either they don't want to talk about it, or they just don't want, whatever. But I wanted to see how the other panel members felt about things like that.
Okay, I'd like to see a show of hands. How many panelists would like to briefly address the question of Earth changes? As many as wish to. Okay, 1, 2, I'll say a word. Would anyone else? Dia? All right, there are at least 4 panelists who will say something. Okay, so why don't we start with Melinda? Go ahead.
I think there's caution because Earth changes in itself is kind of been tossed around a lot, and it's become kind of a catchphrase and means different things to different people. That there are changes going on, there are dramatic and changes in the weather. I don't think anyone will argue that, and stuff that we're going to see happening in the near future. And that all this seems to be increasing as many things seem to be. I think, I'm not sure, how everyone else feels, but I have a feeling there's probably some agreement here on that. But I'm just saying, I think we're being cautious when that, when that term is brought up, because it's become such a catchphrase and kind of gathered a meaning with it that may not actually be what it means. I think it's been being thrown together as meaning like end times and major catastrophes, and it's getting to the end times. We're all wanting to steer clear from that. As far as like myself and my own experiences as an experiencer, when you are shown something like this, you get a message. I don't get any idea really, other than things are speeding up, that this is per se the end time. That it's just a period of change, which, throughout periods of history, we go through these great periods of change, of which we are in another one right now. That's what I get. And so I think when people say Earth changes, I cringe a little, because I want to say, well, what do you mean by that? And, go from there.
Okay, in my lecture tomorrow on the Nostradamus material, I'll be covering this in depth. I'll even have maps that we were given of what would be left of the world if we had the major axis shift. So there will be a lot of material in that, and I cover it extensively, and every time I do lectures on the Nostradamus material, I don't avoid it anyway.
How do you feel about it?
Well, I don't want it to happen. Well, we were given the idea that it's a probability, possibility, and it can be changed by people. We still have the future in our hands. If we know what we're doing is going to precipitate changes, we can do something about it. That's the idea. Give you knowledge you can work with. But I wouldn't look forward to it, no. But I think we can do something about it if we know what's going to happen.
Thank you, Dolores. Whitley, you want to say something?
Well, it's a really interesting and complicated question. I dealt with it a lot in my book, The Secret School. One of the things that happened to me early on in my experience was a terrifically powerful and vivid vision of the moon exploding that involved going to the window and looking out, what appeared to be totally awake, and seeing what would have been 70 or 80, 100-mile large boulders bursting off of the face of the full moon. And a more depressing sight I cannot imagine. And I thought, while it was happening, that it was real. In other words, I had the experience of thinking the world was actually ending at that moment. It turned out apparently not to have happened, however, since we're all still here. And afterwards, I wondered for a long time. I put it in my book, I believe, Transformation, but people would write every once in a while saying that they had had similar things, and there's a sense of of catastrophe and incipient change in the whole close encounter experience. Everyone's always expecting them to land day after tomorrow, or the world is going to come to an end or something. And the reason is that something is coming to an end. I mean, the old way of thinking, the old mind is coming to an end. It's quite clear. With regard to actual physical earth changes, though, there are things happening around us that suggest that this process is already well underway. We have now got this dramatic El Nino in the South Pacific, and a documented but very underreported triangle of warm water that stretches from Baja California to British Columbia in the northern Pacific right now. There is a massive dieback of plankton in that area. Seabirds and therefore also sea creatures in the western Pacific are dying because the krill have ceased to function in that area because it's gotten too warm. There is a massive environmental catastrophe occurring in the Pacific Ocean, unfolding right now, and we're just in the beginning phases of it. We will see it unfold fully. There was a most interesting article in the New Scientist a couple of weeks ago, because whenever I have these, like I had this terrifically fierce vision of the Cordillera from northern Canada all the way down to Tierra del Fuego, the whole spine of the Americas in a single vision. And in the middle of that, Popocatépetl, the volcano in Mexico, blew all to hell. Horrifying. And after that vision, I watched steadily as more and more negative stories about the condition of this volcano kept appearing, until now, just a week ago, I was with Jaime Maussan, the UFO investigator from Mexico City. He said it's getting very, very dangerous. But the article in the New Scientist was particularly telling, because I always look for a mechanism. If there are going to be earth changes, and what's the mechanism? Is it going to be just in our heads? Or, I'm sorry, I mean, there's got to be a physical mechanism. It's going to happen. If a volcano is going to explode, why? Well, it turns out that the rising sea levels are creating significant amounts of additional tectonic pressure, which is going to cause a rise in volcanism all over the planet, which could be quite dramatic. And it's the first time there's been any scientific support for this feeling that so many people have, that there's going to be a lot of things happening. These earth changes aren't being caused by magic. They're being caused by global warming, human overpopulation, perhaps natural effects such as the increase in solar activity and various other things. But yeah, I think it's a big thing, and I think it's something that we should all be very aware of. It's very dangerous.
Whitley, you've also heard that there are active volcanoes under Antarctica. They've discovered, and the water temperature under Antarctica is now the temperature of the Mediterranean.
Well, I hadn't heard it was the temperature of the Mediterranean, but of course, it's true that the subsurface under Antarctica has been getting slowly warmer. If that ice that's on the Antarctic continent slips into the sea, it's sayonara for various places, such as right here will be. This would be a raft job rather than a conference in a hotel. So let's hope that doesn't happen.
Real quick, just to clarify, my personal take, I agree with Whitley there, and I felt like after my comment I needed to maybe clarify. My personal take is the problem, and everyone talks about the earth changes. The problem is not the earth changes. The problem is what is causing them. And so I'm glad you worded it that way, because it made me think, how do I really feel about this? Yeah. But the problem is, what is the cause, and what are we doing to change, and are we going to change in time?
I'd like to make a comment. In earth sciences and space sciences, which I work at for the last 2.5 decades, we have an area of science we call planetary engineering. That's where we look at planets like Mars, where we can change the atmosphere, where it could be inhabited by a bipedal anthropoid form like us. This planet is going through its planet changes. It is a dynamic living creature. It's constantly ever changing. The Pangea, the supercontinent that broke apart at the very beginning, these continents and the tectonic plates are constantly moving. If you ever wonder how the Andes got so big, it was because India and the other continents in Africa had collided. That's what pushed these mountains up. They're still moving. They haven't stopped. And just because man has a Julian calendar that's coming to an end at year 2000, it has no direct correlation with this planet doing its planetary thing. It's in a changing mode. It's going to keep changing. The only difference is you, modern man, has gotten into the middle of its little daily chores of changing. And it doesn't mean it's cataclysmic and the end of the world. It means this planet is changing its structure right now. There's going to be a temporal change. There'll be climate changes. You can look in the another area of science called meteorological archaeology. And this is where recorded in the history, like pages in a book, the layers of the Earth tells us the story. The magnetomic fields of the planet has changed about 32 different times. North and South poles have swapped each other. That's about to change soon. But these changes are gradual because on a timeline, we live 70, 80 years. Well, this planet's 4.5 billion years old. So your time span is not even on the line graph here. So it's going into a ice age. The ice ages and the warm age. The ice age lasts 80,000 years. The warm age is 50,000 years. On the graph, the difference between the warm age and the ice age is a single line. We're in the middle of that single line. Okay, well, don't go buying Parkers all of a sudden. It still will take tens of thousands of years before it's moving, but this thing is changing, and it is right now seems to be dramatic to you, but it's actually doing its thing, and you just happen to be in the way. So there, you're not going to kill this planet. What you will do, if man had such an influence, you will kill your environment that you live in, which will kill you. This planet will shake our carcass off like a dog does fleas. It will recover, and it'll go right on going. You're not so big and bad as you think you are when it comes to planetary engineering. So it's really not to get terribly upset about this, but it is more important to understand the science. Whitley hit it right on the head. It's the forces underneath. This planet is constantly moving. These continental shelves are not stopped. California will not break off and fall in the ocean. You know where it's going to end up? In Alaska. These plates are moving laterally. They're rubbing each other. California's on its way to a new zip code. It's going to be up there in Alaska. But it's going to be a while. Don't worry about changing your address.
Thanks.
Hang on, Mike.
Thanks a lot.
I have one thing just briefly to add.
Okay.
We talk about the scale of time. I think Dave makes a wonderful point that this vast scale of time is involved in these changes. But right now, we are in a situation where there are about 1,800 species a day disappearing on the surface of this planet. Not big deal species like elephants, but little guys that you don't ever notice and they're never going to. Plant species, animal species, insect species of all kinds. The rate of extinction on the Earth right now is approximately as fast as the rate of extinction that was occurring 65 million years ago at the end of the dinosaur age after the impact of the comet. Afterward. That it's happening very dramatically right now, but it didn't start in 1952 or 500 years ago. This process started about 10,000 BC. So it has something to do with us, but not everything.
Robert Gosselin would like to say something.
As the gentleman said, I talk a lot about earth changes. I didn't realize I talked a lot about earth changes, but I guess I do. I'd like to ask you to consider some things here. There's a big difference between someone coming up and telling you knowledge that's over 40,000 years old, that has recorded these events before, that has recorded the happening of events that are presently occurring, It is always the prophets who tell you before the scientists figure out why it's happening. If Jesus was alive today, he would have been called a psychic lunatic. However, everything that he predicted, so it is. What I talk about and what I present when I speak about earth changes, I don't turn around and tell you this is the date, the hour, and the moment that it will strike. There is no way that we can do this. But there are sciences that still exist upon this earth that are much older than the technology that you rely upon presently, that are still in existence and still practiced this very day. There are stones that lie in Peru that tell about surgery that you haven't yet figured out how to accomplish. This was supposedly created by Inca people who didn't even have a knowledge of what a laser could be, or an IBM or a Macintosh. If you were to read what I write about, I've basically got a 97% accuracy rate. You ought to consider that knowledge that's being released now is also moving through the beast. It's moving through the species, 100th monkey theory. It's being affirmed by every station and every level of life. It's really not a doom and gloom thing. It's not a psychic taking a crapshoot at what might happen tomorrow at the lottery. We're working with, this is what we see, this is what we feel, here are the facts, here are the evidences, look at what's occurring, and then draw your own conclusions. That's really what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Okay, as you can see, you did touch a nerve with this question, and there's more to come.
One short comment.
Go ahead, Dia.
The first time I ever heard the term, nothing changes if nothing changes, was from Hugh Lynn Casey, sitting at the Marshalls Hotel in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Those of you who are familiar with Edgar Casey know that there's a book about earth changes. And the most significant thing that Hugh Lynn had to say is that change is constant. It's what we do with the change and how we flow with it, and whether or not we learn the blessings from the adversity that's important. And I think this group of people can definitely handle any changes that this earth or this universe want to throw to us.
I think I'd like to say just one more thing about it, and I'll make this brief as I can. One of the things that is often heard at a conference like this or at the Whole Life Expos, et cetera, is that the earth changes will be some almost a cosmically magical set of occurrences which have no bearing at all upon our scientific understanding of life. And as has been reflected in the comments of every person on this panel, what seems to be more likely true is that what we mean by earth changes are things which arise naturally out of the processes of the earth over long geological time. And indeed, some of those processes are currently being exacerbated or emphasized by human misbehavior. There is a human factor here, to be sure, and that is why it is a true statement every time when you hear someone say, at least partly, we have choice in this matter. Partly we do have the ability to control or change our behavior, and that will help. And it will, there's no question, and learning what that means in detail is definitely worth doing. But this is not a magical process, at least not according to everything I've understood about it, and apparently from the panel as well. So I hope you'll understand that this is not the wrath of God or the end of time as we know it or any of those things. It is a real set of natural processes. And for us here, though, being the little people that we are upon a giant globe, it may seem rather abrupt and catastrophic in some places, depending on what really happens. Okay, so you see, there was something to be said about this episode. Okay.
I'd like to make a comment on what you were talking about and then get into what I originally had.
All right.
But I think in one way I feel that maybe we're forgetting the fact that we're all spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe, and that we're all beings of light and energy, and that the most powerful tool we basically have is our mind. And if through our minds we can create, and we can create our own immediate realities, can't we create a better future for ourselves through the use of that tool by visualizing the best we could possibly envision for our future and for change, using the faith that we have that things are getting better. Basically, faith, the opposite is fear. And the more we fear, the more we attract that which we fear into our existence. So if we use faith and the believability that things can only evolve to something better, wouldn't this be our best tool to face the future and any type of evolutionary changes that we may go through?
Okay, thank you. Do you want to
Now,
the panel
my
to respond,
original
or your
was,
question? Go ahead.
I basically wrote a letter to President Clinton and asked him for seed money or grant money to create a UFO museum and educational center. And he sent the letter on to NASA. And this is pretty much, I don't have it with me, but pretty much what they replied. They said, the U.S. Air Force and no other area of government is responsible for the study of UFOs, and they have never studied UFOs. They have nothing to do with extraterrestrial, or that UFOs have nothing to do with extraterrestrial civilization, and our government has no evidence that there is life on other planets. And the person who wrote the letter and signed it, her name is Peggy, and the last name is Will Hyde. I just thought that was
Well, that's interesting. Would anyone care to comment on NASA's statement? David, anything?
That's a bunch of bulls. I have it's such a personal quandary for me just being here. See, I go home and it's like walking into a blender. I just, I feel like a frog in a blender. What's red and green goes 100 miles an hour, a frog in a blender. It's rough at home because I got to go to Houston Wednesday, and they're gonna know I'm here, and I'm gonna listen to all this stuff. I get ragged on for a while, but they need me because I do things that they just need me. So it's a love-hate relationship down there at best, and it's been a stormy marriage, y'all. But that letter, it's incoherent. The one sentence is contradicting the other. It's so bureaucratic, it just reeks. You could wring that thing out like a mop. The one thing that caught my attention, UFOs have nothing to do with extraterrestrial intelligence. I wonder what kind of intelligence is writing a letter to you, So I get in arguments, and the reason why I get in such arguments, I try to tell my colleagues, we're scientists. Do you remember what the basic thing we used to do? We were supposed to try to figure out the unknown. You guys shut down on it so quick because you can't get a grant for it. You don't want to talk about it. And I said, just because we can't see it or pigeonhole it in our terms today because we don't have the terms to attach to it, it doesn't exist. I thought I wasn't taught this kind of science. I was supposed to keep an open mind and try to stay centered in this process, which is not easy, and try to figure out a rational explanation. And I'll even come to the end of my rope with rational explanations because circumstances sometimes you can't answer with a normal answer. It won't fit the problem. And my friend here, Wolf, that I'll allude to, there are things out there we don't understand. And that I love it because we get humbled when it happens. My colleagues hate that. I love it because they get all bent out of shape. Because you need to be humbled because they get so arrogant. Every time you think an intelligent message comes this planet, if we ever get one, it's meant for us. How do you know it's meant for us? That's pretty arrogant to think, we're the only thing there that's got intelligence. So, it's just the whole concept, the way NASA is behaving. It's their bureaucratic machinery that they were designed to be a research and development in aeronautics. That's what they were supposed to be in deep space research. And now they're doing spacecrafts and flying to and from. They're so out of control. The letter is a good example. One hand doesn't know what the other one's doing. The sentences are contradicting each other. And see, I don't want to scrap the whole system. I happen to love the space program. I'm trying to fix the thing, and it's difficult because you got a patient that's constantly kicking you in the teeth while you're trying to fix it. So it's rough. All I'm saying is, don't pay attention to that letter. I mean, it was a moron that wrote it to begin with. And, so it's, keep on going the way you're going, but try to stay a little bit more centered, don't go way out there. And if you try to keep steady in the middle of the stuff, there is common ground in there. You can find it. Lord mercy, I've been trying to find something solid to stand on for a while, but I've learned a lot when I've hung around with groups like you. You're constantly messing with my head because I can't even watch anything normal anymore. I look at something and go, what does that message mean? My colleague's going, David, you've been going out there too many times, So I said, no, think about it. And they go, on my mail I'll get from some of my colleagues from Rockwell International, Boeing, they'll address it Fox Mulder. So I'm called Fox nowadays.
Thanks, Thanks, David. A little foretaste of David the Dare. You can have more of that tomorrow morning. Yes, sir.
Hi. This message is aimed generally at the whole panel, however, more specifically to Robert. This is in regards to the human species' ultimate quest for knowledge. What are your thoughts and the entire panel's thoughts, please, on the use of psychotropic plants to reach a higher state of consciousness, to discover boundaries of time and space and to dissolve those boundaries, and to journey inwards as a tool for self-discovery? Specifically to recall our own DNA encoding, which has been with us since 4 billion years that our planet's been here.
Thank you. Robert?
I'm sorry, Terrence McKenna, but most of what I do in the ceremonies that I work with, a person can really only speak about what they work with. I try to talk mostly about what I know about, not my opinions. If you want to talk to me about my opinions, we'll meet for lunch. What I work with, there's no use of psychotropic drugs. They're called power plants. Power plants are to be used under extreme circumstance, and they're very damaging to the physical body. They're not meant to be used as recreational vehicles, which is what I see a lot of abuse of in today's world, both the Indian world, white world, black world, red world, and the blue world. What we have to learn now is what we have to do with our minds. And we can do more with frequency and music than we can do with psychotropic drugs. We can do more with preparing the body for movement and travel through time and space and physical dimensions and non-physical dimensions by supporting the body physical, which is nothing more than a mechanical engine. It's a biological computer. And the knowledge of the Egyptians and the Mayans and the Inca and the ancients of this world had to do with the herbs and the preparation of the body for that. One did just not go into the King's Pyramid and suddenly go into the future. I can prove that if you give me about another 2 years, because most of us were in those chambers. What we're all going through now is the final initiation. And this is the most incredible vision that we could have. It's called virtual reality. You think that you're the dream. That's the joke. I don't think that a reliance should be put on something to open up a doorway. There's been a lot of experimentation with that, which is a very ancient understanding. And there's a difference between smoking gunja and taking a power plant. There's a difference between peyote and other things and just taking a recreational thing. Not that one can't have their minds open from hemp. I think there's too much reliance on outside abilities. I can take you to a sweat lodge and take you to the 28th dimension and take you out of time. I can take you where you will meet your ancestors and probably past or future. You'll have to determine that yourself. It's not done with drugs. Healing is not accomplished with drugs. It is accomplished with mind. And in order to use mind, we have to steer toward getting absolute clarity. You can open up doors by a fuel-injected means that you might never be able to come back with. Unless you have the proper training, unless something is done as a sacrament and not as a game of Russian roulette, you may never come back, which is part of what I spend a lot of time fixing. People who mix medicines. You shouldn't go to a sacred Inipi lodge, stone people's house, and take peyote. You're mixing medicine. You wouldn't have 9 drinks and go up in the space shuttle, because you might forget which button to push. And it's always the uncalculated and the move of the fool that causes the catastrophe. It's never the calculated. So I would say that a lot of wisdom has to be studied before one ventures out that way. The true power lies within in your own abilities, because you're the living God. That's where you're forgotten.
Anyone else want to comment on that?
Just a real quick thing. If you take a shortcut, you've learned nothing by the beauty and the lessons of going through the process to get there. And so if you're doing that to achieve an end result, while you may achieve the end, it won't be lasting and you have learned nothing.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you. I'm fascinated by, I'm sorry, these drugs. I've never taken any of them, but I feel very deprived in the sense that we've denied science the chance to research these drugs. They're different from addictive drugs like heroin. They're completely different. And I think we could probably learn a great deal about the human mind and possibly about its relationship to this planet if we were to open the human mind to this kind of research and do it in a careful and considered way. So if it is, these drugs are dangerous, at least then we could tell our kids they are and why they are, instead of making up all these scary stories that they don't believe.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I was born in Nevada because my father was at Area 51 taking advanced flight training, whatever that is. But I don't have a question about that unless there's a comment. I have about 5 or 6 very brief topics that I'd like to raise. They're just brief questions that each one of you might find of interest to comment on or not. So my interest is to be brief and to ask these questions. The first question is about Carl Sagan, and the second is about Immanuel Velikovsky and so forth. Carl Sagan, I was at his last lecture before, in Tallahassee in '93, and I wrote a summary of what happened there for the Velikovsky in a journal I would invite you to look at. But he raised some things about Mars there that were very fascinating. And I would like to know what your opinion is on Carl Sagan and Mars specifically. Carl Sagan, in his earliest works, mentioned that Phobos and Deimos, the 2 moons of Mars, don't exactly follow what we would calculate for the Newtonian for gravity. He speculated they might be hollow, or that they might be of a material we don't know, or they might be acted on electrically. And he went so far as to say that we might see the buildings and monuments of an ancient civilization hidden under the sands of Mars. At his lecture, he said that in the yellow layers beneath the red that covers the planet, we might read more of the history of Mars. Now, I would like to know what any of you would say as far as Hoagland, Sagan, the Readers Look at Mars, the Mars Observer, any of that. That would be my first area for question if you have anything to respond on that.
Okay, that was actually a rather long question, which may elicit very long responses. So I'm going to ask you to give up the microphone to the next guy and come back and ask a second question if you wish. You're welcome to ask a second question, but would anyone like to address the question on Mars?
First of all, please don't lump together Sagan and Hoagland in the same sentence. I had the fortunate aspect at one time I got to know Carl Sagan personally, and you really should have got to know the man. He was the man. You ever heard this phrase, always question authority? Carl Sagan created that. That's who said it. In his earlier days, that was interesting. In his earlier days, his attitude toward life, extraterrestrial life, was completely different than what it was in his final years. And there was a real flip-flop in a lot of his thinking that was very hurtful and confusing for me, because I learned a lot from him as keeping open minds. He always told me keep an open mind, look at other possibilities. And then he was like closing down at the end. I think he was frustrated with America, because the one thing that upset him really bad was the movie Dumb and Dumber, because it was cool to be dumb. and he was really upset about that. He worried about the future generations, that the hard science was being swept away. It's going to be replaced with superstitions. That's it's like I said, I can appreciate that sitting here right now. And it's not that, it's the superstitions, and it's not so much superstitions. There's a lot of stuff, like I said earlier, that we don't understand. But let me stay back focused here on the Mars issue. On the question of moon, Deimos, there's real speculation that the Pioneer probe that went through there and Voyager, some of the readings we got does tend to think that its density rate is not as high as it should be. It could have an ocean inside, a small ocean, and that is kind of mind-boggling to think or no bigger than that could have that, and how to become that way. It's an interesting aspect. Also, there was some other readings that we got off of Mars. Viking, by the way, you understand with Viking, we only had 2 fuzzy photographs in 1976, and from them 2 fuzzy photographs, there was an anomaly in there, the face of Mars. And now he extrapolated all the stuff with Hoagland's come out, extrapolated all this stuff about pyramids, ancient cities, and all that from 2 fuzzy photographs. Okay, come on. But the face, though, that I'll grant you is an interesting anomaly. It deserves real research. NASA should look at it, but the Hoagland's went so far with this thing, NASA finally got the road out. They could just point there, look at all the stuff you think, yeah, right, and now they don't have to look at it. And that's wrong, because that thing really does, I don't know, Mother Nature, even on other planets, don't do 90-degree corners. Okay, and that thing's got 90-degree corners in a surface of a very large structure. But we're not going to get to see it now, at least not right now, until you bring pressure to the public on that some more. So the layer that you were talking about, the yellow dust, the original Viking had a scooper arm, reached out and scooped up stuff. The Martian surface is terrific. An archaeologist would just have an orgasm, drop dead out there, because the atmosphere is so thin, it hasn't eroded everything like here on Earth. And it's just like turning pages, just a few inches of soil, and they can get so many readings. And that's why they would like to get up there and do more about it. But, I've got a problem with that, because, why go hundreds of millions of miles when we can go 240,000 miles back to the moon? Let's work on that thing for a while, but so I've got a problem with policies on that. Any other comments?
Anyone else want to talk about Mars? Anyone else want to talk about Mars specifically? No other takers? I will say just one thing quickly, and that is that, first of all, I don't want to contradict David, but my current understanding is, as I said in my lectures today and yesterday, that Chief Administrator of NASA, Daniel Golden, has said publicly that the Mars Global Surveyor will rephotograph the Cydonia region. The question is whether or not they will use the best of the 3 cameras on board. Mars Global Surveyor is primarily a mapping satellite, and it will, in fact, photograph every square inch of Mars several times over. But only one of the cameras on board actually has a higher level of resolution than the camera that was on board the Viking orbiter in 1976. And only if they use that one camera, which is under the control of a private contractor named Michael Malin, only if they use that one camera will you get significantly better photos of Cydonia. Now, the interesting statements that have been made by Daniel Golden, which he made even at the Washington Press Club, are that the American people have called for these photographs of Cydonia, and therefore NASA will take them because NASA is beholden to the American people. Hallelujah, praise God. And therefore, I believe pressure can be brought to bear upon NASA. You can write letters to NASA, and you can say, and I urge you to do it, dear Chief Administrator Daniel Golden, thank you very much for your assurances that you will rephotograph the Cydonia region. By the way, Dan, use the good camera. I really do recommend that you write those letters.
He reads your letters. He really does.
Okay, I want to say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. That is that in such a letter, you should add that the photographic imagery should be made immediately available to the public as it comes out in real time, and not given first to Malin Space Sciences to analyze. Because I can assure you if that happens and there's something unusual up there, you ain't gonna see it.
All right. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Hey, Michael. This question is directed to you, but anyone else on the panel, if they have anything to add, I would really appreciate it. This question concerns something that you've talked about before in the past, and that is the question of this mysterious planet known as Nibiru or Marduk, which is talked about in the Sumerian cultures and other ancient cultures on this planet. And I was just wondering if there was any new information in the past couple of years that might have come out to either support this legend or myth.
Okay. Actually, I may not be the best person on the panel to say that, so I will say something very briefly and then open it up. I personally am not aware. Yeah, we have to actually call it quick. Can we finish this question? Okay, this will be the last set of answers. There has, of course, been a great deal of discussion whether or not there is another as yet unknown undiscovered planet in the solar system. There are perturbations in the outer part of the solar system which strongly suggest there probably is another large planet which may have a very eccentric orbit. All this, to my knowledge, has yet to be established. Maybe some others know this. The great mystery about the Sumerian culture is that it seems to have arisen full-blown out of the sands of the desert. That is a huge mystery. Anyone who knows anything about ancient archaeology, anthropology, recognizes that the Sumerian culture is a profoundly remarkable event in human history, and the story that they could have gotten help from above is as plausible as any other explanation for why they happened in the first place. However, it is not a proven thing. It is part of a large, very, very well documented theory by Zecharia Sitchin. I think I'd like to leave that right there, though, and recommend that if that intrigues you and you're not aware of Sitchin's work, you should certainly have a look at it. He's written a whole bunch of books. I would recommend you start with a book called Genesis Revisited, or perhaps the first in the Earth Chronicle series called 12th Planet. Would anyone else like to comment?
Also, I mentioned it in 2 of my books.
Oh, and okay.
Yeah.
And which
Because
books
in
are
the
those?
Nostradamus books, we talk about the planet with the elliptical orbit that takes so long to go in and out. And in my book on Jesus and the Essenes were also aware of this planet that went an elliptical orbit.
Okay, would anyone else like to comment on the Nibiru idea or the 12th planet idea? All right, I guess we'll call it quits then. We are out of time. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
I don't know.